What hits harder? A carefully planned horror release or the kind of real-world nightmare you never expect to read about? Welcome back to The Final Cut, your daily pulse in horror. I'm Travis, and today is Friday, our final episode of the week before we roll into what's shaping up to be a very busy stretch for horror news. We've got a major summer horror release locked in, one of the most disturbing real-world stories we've covered, and an indie horror film that turns the true crime podcast boom right back on itself. But first, let's take care of our sponsors. Over at Grove, don't forget the warehouse clearance deals are still going strong. We're talking DVDs, Blu-ray, 4K, steelbooks, digital codes, all at deep discounts as they clear out of that end of the year inventory. You can still pre-order It Welcome to Derry, the complete first season, along with upcoming releases like Deathstalker, landing February 17th. And if you're building a physical media collection or catching up on 2024 and 2025 genre titles, Grove is absolutely worth digging through right now. Even if you're looking for some old favorites, it's great to dig through there. Over at Fanatical, the winter sale continues with build your own bundles, steep discounts on horror and thriller PC titles, and limited time book bundles, including that Vampire Hunter D, the complete saga. Plenty of value still on the table if you're stocking up for the colder months. All right, let's get into today's stories. First up, André Øvredal is officially back. Paramount has locked in May 29th, 2026 for a theatrical release for Passenger, the director's next horror film following the last voyage of the Demeter. The film stars Jacob Scipio, Lou Lobel, and Melissa Leo, with plot details being kept deliberately vague. Production comes from Walter Hamada via his 18 Hertz alongside Gary Doberman, which already tells you this is a studio horror project with real weight behind it. What stands out here is timing. Passenger is landing right between The Mandalorian and Grogu in Masters of the Universe, a summer quarter usually reserved for massive franchises. That placement says Paramount believes horror belongs in the center of the conversation again, not pushed to the margins. And remember, we talked about Walter Hamada last year and the role that he's going to be doing with Paramount. Budgeted films underneath $1 million that are horror, and I guarantee you a lot of these are going to be going to the Paramount Plus platform more than you're going to see them in theaters. Now, Andre's film more than likely will be in theaters, but don't expect a lot of these films, in my personal opinion, this is my opinion only, to be in theaters. I expect a lot of these things to flood Paramount Plus, kind of like how when the pandemic and things were going on and they were able to do the Paranormal Activity next to Kin. But my question for you guys is 2026 shaping up to be the moment horror fully reclaims blockbuster confidence? Let me know your answers in the comments ahead. Next up, this is one of the most disturbing real world stories we've covered on The Final Cut. Authorities in Pennsylvania say more than 100 full or partial human remains were recovered from a man's home and storage units following months of cemetery burglaries at Mount Moriah Cemetery, a historic burial ground dating back to 1855. Prosecutors described the scene as a horror movie coming to life. Investigators allege graves and mausoleums were targeted over several months, with remains transported and stored like stolen property. There's nothing sensational about this story. It's sick. It's a stark reminder that horror doesn't always stay on the screen. Sometimes it exists in the real world quietly until it's exposed. What the fuck is he about to do with all these bones? My question for you guys, though, is when real life becomes the disturbing, does horror fiction help us process it, or does it blur the line too much? Let me know your answers in the comments ahead. And finally, rounding out today's episode is a very sharp indie horror that feels very much of this moment. Now, you guys have seen all the A24 stuff now, right? With Undertone. That's a podcast. That's a big it's not necessarily a super huge budgeted film, but this thing is going to be playing Sundance. It's already got its theater release date. We got a podcast film that is also in the indie realm that you guys can now stream on Apple TV and Amazon Prime. Yes, The Vindicator. The Vindicator, now streaming on Apple TV and Amazon Prime, follows a group of true crime podcasters who travel to Arizona chasing their next big episode, only to find themselves trapped inside a nightmare of their own making. Directed by Luca Petruno, the film digs into performative media, curated authenticity, and the false sense of control creators think they have when everything is being recorded. What makes The Vindicator effective is that the killer isn't the only threat. Ego, secrets, and fractured relationships do just as much damage. My question for you guys is, has true crime culture reached the point where it really needs to be interrogated by horror itself? Let me know your guys' answers in the comments ahead. Today's take. What ties today's stories together is control, or the illusion of it. Studios trying to control release windows, creators trying to control narratives, and real-world horror reminding us that control is often a myth. Horror works best when it exposes that truth, when it forces us to sit with discomfort instead of offering clean resolutions. That's why the genre continues to matter. That wraps up Friday's episode of The Final Cut. Thanks to everyone who watched, commented, shared, and stuck with us this week. We'll be back next week, back to the original schedule. Daily horror headlines, deep dives, and coverage you won't find anywhere else. The goal is to make sure you guys are not missing the stuff that is driving by every day. And don't forget, make sure to follow us at HMUNCUT. Talk about the show, share the show. We really, really appreciate it. Until next week, you guys know the drill.